there's three sections, right? The first tier, these little cubby holes, those are called embrasures. That's where the muzzle of the cannons would stick out. And behind them, those are casemates. I'm going to take you inside that as well. And right above them, you see it's basically the same thing, but a bigger opening. That's because they never completed the second tier of the fort. If some of you had already gone up there and checked it out, you can tell that the groundwork's a lot bumpier up there. They never finished it. It's a lot of coral and conch shells up there. They never laid the slate down. They also never finished the embrasures. Those bigger openings are supposed to look like the ones below them. But they never finished that because they didn't want to put any more weight up there. They didn't put the cannons up there. They didn't want to make it settle any more than it already did. You can see this bastion right here. See how the dark brickwork starts to go on an incline into the moat? It's because the fort settled 12 inches over time. So they didn't want to weigh it down any more than it already had. So right above them, you can see it's basically the same thing as the embrasures below, but you can see the brickwork behind it. There's a wall. That only purpose it served was intimidation. Basically, for a ship farther away to think, okay, so there's artillery sticking out every single one of these little cubby holes right there. So those are called blind embrasures. And then the last two sets are embrasures. But the only ones they completed were the first tier. Most of these first tier embrasures had shutters called cotton shutters. If you walk along the south side over there, you can still see some of the replicas of those iron shutters. I'll go over a little bit more about that once we get inside. And then you can see it looks like ice cream cones along the top, decorative arches. That's called tourmaline, and that basically acted as a grip edge for the face of the wall, prevented erosion from damage. Hexagonal fort, 6 sides, 6 bastions, and each bastion is a spiral staircase. Goes clockwise all the way up to each 3 tiers. And the moat, it's 10 feet deep, 70 feet wide. It acted for 3 different things. There was a barrier for attackers, oncoming attackers. Let's say, they wanted to get their ship right up on the wall, maybe throw something over and try to scale that wall. They couldn't because this moat was here. At the time, this bridge right here was a drawbridge. So they'd have to somehow figure out how to cross this moat and break through that drawbridge to get inside. It also was a sewage system. Now, the sewage system, it backed up a lot, and it would actually clear out right here by the bridge. And Mud's cell was those 3 little slots above the Sally Port entrance. Right behind that was his cell. And one of the letters he wrote, or a lot of them that he wrote how most of the time he couldn't breathe too well, because that's where all the sewage would clear out and all the airflow would come right up into his cell. So I don't know if they did that on purpose to him or not, but we're in the middle of the Gulf of Mexico for any vessels to get away or protect themselves from bad weather. And it was also protect and fortify the harbors, and also station the Navy safely outside of the passages. Flow the traffic from the East Coast all the way into the heart of our country, which is New Orleans. And it was also so nobody could utilize the shipping industry or control the massive amounts of goods traveling through these passageways on ships into the heart of our country. So this room that we're standing in, this is called the Sally Port. Right here, instead of this bridge at one point in time. So if an attack were to come, they'd have to break through this drawbridge, and then all of a sudden they'd be faced with 2 giant oak doors that were right here. They would roll open on tracks. They were so heavy. You can see the tracks along the floors over there as well. So if they broke through those 2 sets of doors in that drawbridge, they'd be in this Sally Port getting fired at from both sides. And then 2 giant oak doors right here. There's no chance they're getting through this. And then these 2 granite rails right here, these actually would guide carriages in for the mules. So I told you wooden sailing ships, they didn't get out here as fast as the Yankee Freedom did today. Depending on the weather, it could take 24 hours, days at a time. So by the time they got here, most of the food that they brought was rotten, bad, spoiled. So they'd manually offload all this supplies of food onto these carriages, guide them in with mules, And a lot of the soldiers and prisoners complained in their journals and their letters about how bad the food was and how gross it was. There's bugs and sticks stuck in them.
Not like we were good today.
Yeah. No chicken salad on their menu.
Very good.
They made this lighthouse out of brick and mortar, and it stood 70 feet tall. And then right next to it, they had a house for the caretaker of the lighthouse that they had built. So this lighthouse stood and served up until 1875. It was damaged by a hurricane out here. And then in replacement of this lighthouse, they put this boiler one up there. Boilerplate iron. And it's 90 miles from Cuba to Key West. But these waters aren't as patrolled as the waters from Cuba to Key West are, so they'd actually prefer to come 106 miles here than 90 miles to Key West because they have a better chance of getting here. We actually just had a boat come in, there was one the day before Thanksgiving, and then I think about 2 weeks ago we had one come in, and they basically, one time they rowed the boat back with us, and then either the Coast Guard will come out and get them, and then they go to Miami and get processed. But they'll come in on these boats, they build these. The last people that came in 2 weeks ago, it took them 4 days, and it's supposed to be a one-day trip. And it was a very small little boat. We can actually walk in that one, you can see this is basically what they use to steer. You know, you get caught in a cold front. They're in the same waves we came in here today on a boat that can fit 1,000,000 times inside the one we were riding in.
With no Dramamine.
Without any Dramamine. Or ginger ale. Good point. Allow it to swivel. Now the carriage actually almost looked like a hitch, so a trailer hitch. So with the tongue of it would lock down in here what looks like a fireplace. Then there'd be a big iron pin that would lock it into place right here and allow it to move back and forth. Now the carriage was so big that they had to cut these little squares in there just to give it its full swivel, its full 90-degree angle or turn. So the muzzle would stick out right here of this embrasure. I showed you guys what these look like on the outside before. But they actually had taut shutters that hung from it. Now taut shutters were really advanced for that time because they were big, thick iron shutters and they locked automatically. So the soldier would actually have to remember to manually unlock them before they fired a shot. And they would just kind of sit swinging open. The air from that shot would push them open, push the fire out, and then swing themselves and automatically lock themselves shut. So the only time they were exposed to any type of fire or harm was that couple seconds of shooting out of fire and closing themselves back up. They hung them a couple inches below the ceiling so that the soldiers could still see what they were looking at and aiming at, but they weren't exposed to any harm while they were doing it. If you guys look behind you, we're just going to turn it on right here. This little square is concrete, filled in with concrete now, but it used to be a little wooden hatch that laid across it, and it was a cistern. Cistern system is what they tried to use to hold the fresh water here. And there's 110 of them, 109 of them sit under us on the first tier. The 110th one is the National Park Service uses still to this day. They use reverse osmosis. Does anybody know what that is? Basically a bunch of high pressure filters to just remove the impurities from the salt water. That's what they use for that last cistern over there. It's above ground. All the other ones are below. Now, because of settling of the fort, that damaged 106 out of 109 cisterns and made them couldn't even use them. So what they did, or what they thought would work really well, is, hey, let's dredge the moat out. That's how they made it. Took all that sand and threw it on the top tier. Let's use this as a filter for all of this nice fresh rainwater to come filter through, trickle down these casemates, and then come through this big iron steel pipe and come down into the cistern right behind you guys. When it rains really hard, it'll still pipe through. Now, what they didn't realize for some reason is all this rainwater going through this salty sand coming down along these pipes. There's brackish water and completely undrinkable by the time it gets down here. And along with all these cisterns, or most of them cracking, I was told that you could lift this hatch up and look down at the cistern, and as the tide rose, all the water rose. And as the tide left, all that water would leave right back with it. So that never works. Scratch that idea. They bring in a saltwater power condensing plant. And that takes 2 large amounts of ingredients. Salt water, plenty of that. Anybody know what the other ingredient is? Fuel. They need lots and lots of fuel. And how do they need that fuel out here? Those unreliable sailing ships that they can't count on for anything. So now they have 1,200 people at that time depending on sailing ships to get out here with massive amounts of fuel to supply them for fresh water, which is necessary, right? So that never worked either. They never actually figured out how to supply enough fresh water out here. Even to this day, the National Park Service sometimes is still limited to the amount of showers they can take a week, or how long their showers can be, up to a minute. Or we have interns that will come out here and stay the summer, and they're responsible to bring their own water, and you can take 6-minute showers once a day. They have rules and regulations because there's still water shortage out here. One of the 4 known conspirators to the participation and assassination of President Lincoln. Now, Mudd missed the death penalty by 1 vote, sent out here for a lifetime of hard labor with a great view. But he actually didn't serve a lifetime out here. So when yellow fever broke out, they quarantined all the ill people on Hospital Key. Now they started out here with 4 fort physicians out here. They actually all ended up dying from the disease yellow fever. And really the only option they turned to was Dr. Mudd. So he actually knew that yellow fever wasn't contagious through contact. It was through mosquitoes. So he brought these people back from Hospital Key, and they started to see other people, interact with people. They weren't just kind of, put away somewhere and drop you a box of food and never see you again. They were basically, just secluded over there. So we brought them back here and just started working with these people, and not all of them started dying off. They started getting better. They started becoming healthier. And he actually turned yellow fever around. So after all that time, the non-commissioned officers out here, the soldiers, his wife wrote a bunch of letters, but the officers and soldiers out here actually signed a petition, sent it to the government, and they pardoned him after 6 years of being out here. They pardoned him of his crimes, and he became a free man after 6 years, rather than a lifetime. So this was his cell for the majority of the time while he was here. If you look right here, there's canals dug in the floor. Most of the prisoners dug these canals, or similar to them, but Mudd dug this one. It was to collect the condensation, because there's not a lot of fresh drinking water out here. The prisoners aren't going to be the first ones to get any of it, right? So this is actually what they used as their drinking water. Now while Mud was here, before he got pardoned and became a free man, he tried to escape. And then he was thrown in a dungeon. So when he tried to escape, I told you these wooden sailing ships would come out and bring supplies and stuff, and they'd be manually offloaded, mainly by the prisoners. So he's like, okay, hey, maybe this is my chance to try and get away. I'm going to go help offload all the supplies and stow myself away on the ship. Well, one thing he forgot, he's a big deal around here, he's Mr. Popular. Everybody wanted to know who Mud was if they didn't already know who he was and what he looked like and where his cell was located. He was the big dog. So as soon as he went missing, soldiers knew. They knew exactly where he lived. They found him the first spot they looked. And they were all super excited. I'm sure they were patting each other on the back, bragging about it. They turn around and see this sailing ship off in the distance and realize, oh darn, we forgot to look for any other prisoners that tried to stow away. And 4 men became free men on that same ship thanks to Mud not being so good at hide and seek. So he only served 6 years out here. There was actually, that's one thing I forgot to tell you guys, there were no bars in these cells. So there wasn't really, the prisoners couldn't really go that far, right? So they were actually free to roam up and down whatever tier they were located on. And then the soldiers at night would patrol this little runway right here. They also used this runway because well, they never put the cannons up here, but if they were to put most of the cannons that were planned up here, in case of, they were under attack, it was easy access to run up and down all these casemates right here because there's supposed to be giant carriages in these arches right here. So the only way you could really escape if you were a prisoner was to jump for it. And you couldn't jump on this side because there's soldiers, so you either jump into the moat, get eaten by an alligator and covered in poo, or you're staying where you are. Alright guys, so we're going to walk back to the staircase.
enough food here for them.